the time I was 13, I've been nannying my two cousins, one of which has been diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, or SPD. At first, I was overwhelmed trying to manage all of his extreme behaviors, but eventually I found some techniques that helped. I'm sure many of you have never even heard of SPD until today. But SPD needs to be recognized as a disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or DSM. First, I'm going to tell you about some problems with SPD not being recognized as a disorder, then I'm going to tell you about some solutions. First, I'm going to tell you about the problem with SPD not being recognized as a disorder. In Beth Arkey's article, Sensory Processing Issues Explained, written for the Child Mind Institute in 2021, Dr. Jean Ayres was the first person to research SPD, and she found that children with SPD process situations using 7 senses instead of the traditional 5. The brain is simply unable to comprehend all this information at once, and it's visualized like a traffic jam in your head. According to Sarah Dewart's article, Talking Sense of Sensory Processing Disorders, that's about autism, written for Spectrum magazine on June 1st, 2016, Ayres was the first person to be able to recognize and treat SPD, and some occupational therapists still use her treatment methods today. According to Claire Conway's article, The Unbearable Sense of Being, written for the UCSF magazine, summer 2018, most children show signs for SPD when they're toddlers, but they're simply brushed off because they're sensitive to normal things such as light, irritating clothing, shoes, and they can sometimes show underdeveloped fine motor skills or clumsiness. Some children show extreme behaviors, such as throwing temper tantrums or screaming when they're irritated or stressed, and some children are even too sensitive to wear diapers, which, as you can imagine, takes a toll on parents as well as children. Some children, clinicians initially blamed SPD on bad parenting. Referring back to Sarah Dewart's article, SPD is not recognized as a disorder in DSM. It's currently considered a symptom of autism or byproduct of ADHD. However, a 2012 study showed that over half of the children diagnosed with SPD are not able to be diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or ADHD. The study did not take into account autism. Because SPD is not recognized as a disorder in DSM, it's really difficult to find funding for research. According to Louis Pellegrino, John Pope, and Kathleen Ramirez's article, Sensory Processing Disorder, written for Michigan Medicine, University of Michigan, on September 23, 2020, the exact cause for SPD is still unknown. Now that I told you about some problems with SPD not being recognized as a disorder, now I'm going to tell you about some solutions. Referring back to Claire Conway's article, she mentioned Alyssa Marco, MD. Marco has revolved her career around acquiring better knowledge for SPD and how to help families and children. Marco has been able to shift the blame off of parents and focus on the brain structure of the child. In Juliana Burnham's article, Breakthrough Study Reveals Biological Basis for SPD in Kids, written for the UCSF magazine on July 9, 2013, she mentions 2 projects performed by Marco. The first one, she joined forces with Patrick Mukherjee, PhD and MD, a radiologist at the University of California, San Francisco, where they took brain imaging scans of 16 boys with SPD and compared them to 24 boys who were considered to be typically developing. The 16 SPD boys had not been diagnosed with autism or prematurity, and the 24 boys were matched with the 16 boys according to age, gender, IQ, and dominant writing hand. They found abnormal tracks in the white matter. White matter is the part of the brain that has to do with the connection between the left and right side of the brain. According to Claire Conway's article, white matter also has to do with perceiving, thinking, and learning. This study proved a biological basis for SPD in kids. The second study tracked water molecules through the white matter in the brain and compared them to boys with SPD and boys with autism. When the water molecules were going in the same direction, the connection was strong. When they were going in opposing directions, the connection was weak. They found different amounts of neuron connection in the white matter in boys with SPD and boys with autism. This proved that autism and SPD are 2 separate disorders. Marco also developed a 4-part treatment plan. The first 2 parts have to do with helping the parents understand what's triggering in their child's environment. The third part helps children understand how to respond in a healthier manner to triggering situations, and the 4th part deals with medicine and how to help the child desensitize to overstimulation. This, however, is more typically used and almost exclusively used in children who are extremely sensitive to touch. Marco also recommends that children with SPD have a very strict schedule, and sometimes homeschooling can help with this. Furthermore, she recommends that parents get an occupational therapist to understand what they can adapt in their child's environment. By adding SPD to DSM, it would provide a better option for treatment methods, research, and it would help diagnose children better and faster. I just told you about some problems with SPD not being recognized as a disorder, and I told you about some solutions. SPD needs to be recognized as a disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or DSM. The new research that is being done on SPD is going to help families just like my own understand what's really happening with their child.